Sorry, there is no audio on the stream. That's okay. Everything I set up until now was just for Discord anyway. So if you're watching in the Twitch chat, you can still participate in this as well. Just follow along, and then we'll get to the challenge part, and you can register for the challenge tool. But if you're in Discord, just make sure that you are in the live stream. So you want to hover over my name and then click on the icon. Okay. Yep. I'm unmuted. It's just a delay. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and dive into this for those of you who are following along. So here's how this thing is going to work. We have a, let's see if I can get display capture. There we go. Okay. So we're going to do a 10 to 15 minute presentation just covering one, what big data is, what it literally means, because it's a buzzword. And so it's kind of hard to talk about. Two, we're going to be talking about what the, for the challenge itself, we're going to be talking about what programming language we're going to use. I'm going to go into some of the basics of it, but you don't actually need to know all of the specifics. Because we have a cheat sheet for you and you'll be able to use this presentation. So I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, and then you'll be able to refer back to it. So it's okay if you don't remember every single thing from the presentation. And then once we're done, we will get to go into an actual challenge. And so what that's going to look like, and I'll show you some screenshots in a bit, is you are actually going to be able to register for an online tool. And then you will be able to try to solve a bunch of problems before the end of the challenge. And whoever gets the most points wins a prize. And I don't know if we know exactly what the prize is. In the past, we've done sort of you can pick anything you want under $70. And then you'll also get like a trophy. So I think we'll probably take the top 3 people maybe. And the top 3 scoring people will get to pick any prize that they want that we can get on Amazon, or we could order you a pizza or something. Plus you'll get a trophy shipped to you as well. So with that in mind, we will kind of get into things and get on our way toward the challenge. Okay, so what is big data? What does that mean? Like I said, it's a buzzword. People kind of use it as a buzzword, which is to say it's not ever really clear what it means. And the answer is it doesn't specifically mean anything, right? Big data is just when you have a lot of data. There's different types of data. It could be data that is structured data is the example that it gives in here. So that could be things like if you have an Excel spreadsheet. If you think of an Excel spreadsheet, that's kind of structured data. It's you have a really structured format to it. But we also produce lots of data that's not structured, right? So we have emails, that we've sent. We have text messages in the Discord, tweets maybe that you've posted, Facebook posts, all of those sort of things are also data as well, but they're not necessarily as easy to work with. And when you take all the data in the world together, whether it's in an Excel spreadsheet or the huge amount of data that's not in an Excel spreadsheet, you end up with just a lot of stuff. And sometimes if you have too much stuff, it's slow to work with. And so basically the entire point of big data as a field is to make it fast to work with lots of data. Now, if you have a really slow computer, big data might actually be smaller for you than someone who has a really fast computer. Because really, that's kind of what it comes down to. But at a certain scale, everything is big data because no one computer can handle it all. There's just too much. Okay, so we're going to be talking about 2 things today. You don't necessarily need to know the specifics of them, but the first one is a thing called HPCC systems. And that is basically a actual software thing that sort of does all the processing for us. And the idea is it's like a cluster, which means you have a bunch of computers working together. We're going to be also talking about this thing called ECL, which is a programming language, and that's the thing that we're going to be using for the challenge itself. And this programming language just runs on this computer cluster. Okay, so when we're talking about big data, here's a few things to keep in mind. I'm just going to mention these terms. The slides are overcomplicated, I think, for most people, but I'm going to mention these words. Data lake, if you ever get interested in big data and you want to work in big data, you'll hear this term data lake. Basically, it means like if you've ever had a drawer where you just kind of put stuff in it because you don't know where it goes. That's kind of how I like to think of a data lake. It's a fancy way of saying it's like a bunch of hard drives. They're pretty fast. You try to make sure that there's a lot of it so you never run out of storage, and you just kind of throw all of your stuff that you get there. And you don't necessarily worry about what format it's in. You just kind of throw it there, and then you deal with it later when you need to use it. That's a data lake. This is the entire structure. This looks really complicated. Again, don't worry about it. When we're talking about big data stuff, basically what we're talking about is we take the data that we have, we then reformat it in a way that's useful. We standardize it in a way that can be used amongst itself, and then we relate it to each other. And then from that, we can create graphs or decide how likely someone is to, default on their credit, or whatever it is that people do, right? Decide how risky of a driver you are so they can decide how much to charge you for insurance. All of these are things that people do with big data. This is generally the flow that people do, though, is they kind of go from, really messy, unordered stuff that's all that stuff that has been, just stuffed in a drawer, and kind of turning it into more structured things that you can use. Now, how do we actually work with this? So we were talking about how one of the benefits of this big data thing is it makes it possible for us to deal with, when we have, let's say that we have enough data that it would take us 1 year to process it. We want to know something, doesn't matter what, and it would take us 1 year to process it. That's obviously not going to work, right? It's too long. No one wants to do that. So what if we could just split it up again amongst 365 computers, and they're all working at the same time to process it, but instead of taking 1 year, it takes 365 computers only 1 day each. So they still do the same amount of work, but it's split up between them. This is basically, after it's been sort of gone through that process of turning it into useful format, what we do is we run it on multiple computers. And so what we do is we divide it, and then we send the smaller bits of data to individual computers. This is like a divide and conquer, if you've ever heard that, or the term that we use sometimes for this sort of thing in computer science is also called MapReduce. And the idea is we map this into a bunch of smaller pieces. Each one of them gets worked on independently, and then at the end, we sort of bring it all back together. So that's kind of how we deal with this this problem of having a lot of stuff going on. Example of this, by the way, this is just an example that they gave me of the company that's sponsoring this. They built a smart hat, and they took all of the data coming from a factory and used it to predict if someone would need an ambulance called or something like that. And so you could take information not only about whether or not they got hit in the head and how hard, but what's being worked in the factory that day, which you could probably get from work orders or something, which is not very structured. You could probably take how hot is it that day? Is the person going to get heat stroke or something like that? So you can get all this information, you can turn it into something useful. You all are probably more familiar with more exciting uses of this as well from a student perspective. So that's an example. Okay, so now let's get into the challenge part. We're going to talk about the big data challenge itself. So the first thing that everyone should do right now is pull up a web browser and go to play-data-challenge.codeday.org, and I'll post it in the chat on Discord. So if you want to play the data challenge, that is the URL you need to go to, and you need to make yourself an account. And we'll talk about how to use things in a minute, but that is the way that we are going to register for the data challenge. And this is where you're going to see all the questions and be able to solve some of them. Now, once you're logged into the Big Data Challenge, this is what it'll look like. And if you've ever played Code Cup, this looks pretty similar to you. The left-hand side, we have a list of challenges. The right-hand side, we have the actual question text. So it'll ask you to solve a particular problem, and you'll see that on the right-hand side. There's a link in each one of these to the data set. All you need to do is click that link and it will open an editor for you. You don't need to download anything. You don't need to install anything. All you need to do is open the online editor and it'll already have the data in there for you. On the left-hand side, you see all of the challenges you can possibly get. Now, it won't show you these quite yet, I think. If you log in, it'll say that it's not open yet, but in a minute after we're done with this presentation, it will be. So each one of these challenges has a number in parentheses next to it, and that's how many points it's worth. At the end of this challenge, whoever has the most points, or the top 3 scoring people, will win the challenge. So that's kind of what we're looking for, is who will be able to score the most points by the end of this. You won't be able to solve every single problem. If you're feeling more confident, you can start with the higher value problems and try to get more points. But you can also just go for the easy ones too. Top 3 people will be able to get a prize. And you'll see, again, every single one of these will have a link that says use the preloaded data set. And you can click on that link to open the editor. It's the same link for every single one. So if you have it open, you don't need to keep reopening it. You can just use the single link. But they all have it linked in there no matter what one you click. When you get the answer to a question, you paste it down here in the box underneath the question and click submit. That's how you submit your answer. And if it's right, then you get the points. Okay, now the other thing that you need to register for, this shows you all the questions. The other thing you need to register for is that online editor. When you click the link, it'll ask you to register if you're not already. So you can just wait if you want, but if you want to get a jump on things, register for this online editor. It just asks you for an email and a password. Okay, so once you're in the editor, you'll see a window that looks like this. This is where you write your code. This is where you see the results. I've got a bunch of sample files in here, but you don't need to worry about it. All you need to do is, it'll come with 2 sample files. One of them, it will say don't use this. And the other one is where you can write your code. And you'll see, like, here's the simplest version. I could type import get music and then output the entire music. Okay. So, oh yeah, I can show you this. Someone was asking, can you use your Codeday account? You cannot use your Codeday account for this yet. Hopefully someday. So that's the other link that you want to register for. And if you're registered for both of these, you'll be all set to go. And if you're not, we'll figure it out as we go through. Okay. So yeah, so this is what it looks like again, and this is where we'll be writing our code. Okay. I'm gonna mute you. To be honest, I don't know why he was unmuted. Okay. So yeah. So ECL is the programming language we're going to be using. And it lets us do a bunch of stuff. It'll do a bunch of stuff for us. This entire diagram is just sort of transparently handled for you, which is pretty neat. I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff that is in this programming language now. This is the last part of the presentation before we get into the actual challenge, by the way. You don't need to remember any of this. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. I want you to remember what slide things are on. And as long as you remember what slide things are on, this presentation is linked to in the Big Data Challenge. You can just go back and find the slide that says what you need to know. So here's general stuff about it. It's not case sensitive. White space doesn't matter, but it's good to format your thing pretty well. And if you've ever used objects in another programming language, you can use them here too. Everything is a data set. It looks like an Excel table, by the way. This is generally what it looks like. You'll see that. You saw that in the screenshot too. It looks like a table. Usually you'd have to import data sets, but this is all done for you, so don't even worry about this. This is all done. It's already all there. You don't have to worry about any of this. It's already all written for you. Okay, here's some things you might want to know. If you want to output something, you just wrap it in a call to the output function. So you can see in this case, we're outputting something. There's this thing that says named. That's kind of optional unless you're doing any data visualization stuff. If you want just the first n results, like if you want the first 2 results, you can pass in the data source and just say chosen, and then the number that you want. If you want to sort something, the way you do that is with the sort. So you can see that right here, sort. And then you just give it the name of what field you want to sort by. So that's pretty neat. It's pretty easy to use. And then you would output that. And you can see here's how variables work as well. If you want to filter something, what you do is you act as if your data set itself is a function. So you add parentheses and you type in what you want to filter by. So you can see in this example, we want to filter by city, just where the city is equal to Tampa. So we just take our variable that represents the data set, and we just say city is equal to Tampa. There's a bunch of math functions. I'm not going to go through all of them here, but you will need, this is probably the most frequent thing, especially all the beginner questions basically just ask you to run a math function on the data set. Count, if you want the number. Maximum, if you want to get the maximum value, and you just give it what field. Minimum, if you want to get the minimum value in a field. Average, if you want to average out a field. You can add 2 fields together by calling sum and just doing it this way. You can truncate things, which basically just means remove the decimal point. And then you can also round things, which means remove the decimal point and round up or down. Here's one for the intermediate problems that you'll want to know. Some of the intermediate problems will ask you to talk about correlation. To use correlation, all you need to do is run a function called correlation. And what that means is, if you think of like, as the temperature goes up, how much sweat do you produce? That correlation value is probably going to be close to 1, which means as the temperature goes up, you produce more sweat. As the temperature goes down, you produce less sweat. Like that's the correlation there, right? A correlation of -1 would basically mean, like, let's say how close I am to the heater versus how much sweat I produce. Like as I get further away from the heater, the distance goes up, my sweat production goes down. Like that's a negative correlation. That would be a -1, and 0 means it's completely unrelated. So that's something you might want to do in the real world. Some of the questions will ask you to do it. The way you do it is you just type correlation, give it the data set, and then give it the two fields that you want to correlate. Modules, we don't really need this. It's here if you want to learn more about it. I think only the advanced questions need it. Transforms and projects. If you are working on, I think, only the advanced projects, you'll need to know about transforms and projects. The idea is if you want to transform a data set to be in a different format, you can do that by writing a project function and then applying it to the data set by calling transform. Most people don't need to know that, so I'm not going to go into it. But if you are doing the advanced problems, come back and look at this slide. And this slide. There's one problem in here, which is the most advanced problem, I think, in here, and it's about creating a temporary table. If you want to work on that, come here, take a look at this sample code. This will give you some idea of how to do that. And then you might also need to use joins, which is a way of taking 2 tables. So like an example of this would be like if I have a table that's like username and real name, and I have a separate table that's like username and Discord ID, and I want to find the real name of someone's Discord ID, I can sort of join those 2 by comparing the usernames and creating one unified table. And the way to do that is with the join command. If you need that for one of the advanced questions, you can use that as well. So this is how that works. And again, you can refer back to this presentation. And lastly, none of the questions ask you about this, but if you want to keep playing around with this after the challenge, there's a visualization function. It'll let you build cool visualizations. Okay, so what is next? We are going to start the Big Data Challenge in just a second. I wanted to mention a few things before we go. One, again, this presentation is in the Big Data Challenge. If you go to the first, let me scroll way back up here. Over here, there's a note called README. There are two problems here, README and Your First Challenge. Read both of those first in order. README has a link to this presentation. You can see it right there. Big Data plus ECL presentation. There's also a cheat sheet, which you might find easier to look at, that has everything on one page. Those two are linked right here in README. All you need to do on the Big Data Challenge website is open that README one and click on these two. The second thing that I recommend you do is do the Your First Challenge. It will walk you through the process of, like basically creating and running a file. So you can find them both there. The second thing I wanted to mention before we get started is this. LexisNexis Risk Solutions is the company that builds this entire thing. They have internships for high school and college students. And it does not matter where in the world you are. And historically, they've been a little bit competitive, but not all that competitive. They're paid internships, like real internships for a real tech company. They've hired people from CodeDay before. I would strongly encourage you, if you are interested in this, to apply for an internship. And they are doing a workshop, I think, on Thursday. So after CodeDay ends, they're having one of the people who runs that internship is doing a Zoom workshop. You can submit questions if you can't make it, or if you can make it, you can just come ask her questions and learn more about that. The deadline to apply for that is, I think it's like February or March, but the sooner you apply, the better. So if you apply now, like you could get an offer even earlier. So if you're interested in that, that will be posted in announcements after CodeDay ends. It's also linked to, I think, in the jobs section of the Discord, so you can find that in there too. But if you're interested in that, consider giving it a try. Okay, so with that in mind, I am going to go ahead and make sure that the Big Data Challenge is now open, which it looks like it is. So you're going to want to go to play-data-challenge.codeday.org and go ahead and get started. Now, again, the challenge is going to end in 30 minutes at the top of the hour, wherever you are. Unless you're in one of those weird places that's off by 30 minutes for most of the world. But the challenge will end in 30 minutes. Whichever 3 teams have the most points at the end of the challenge, you will want to go ahead and send me a DM on Discord, or you can send me an email, or however you want to get in touch. And we will get your prize sorted out. And again, you can pick anything that you want, up to $70. But typically, we've asked people to just pick something kind of silly because it's fun. So I think, like, in the past, people have asked for us to arrange a delivery of a cheesecake, or like a Bob Ross waffle maker, lots of silly things like that. And you'll get a trophy. So that's for the top three winners. So go ahead and go to play-data-challenge.codeday.org. Follow the instructions in README and Your First Challenge. And I will also be in the text chat to help answer questions. One thing, I think that the script was actually renamed. So there used to be some of the things refer to using a thing called called Do Math, and I think it has actually been renamed. So I'll show you what this looks like live if you're still in the thing. See, I've done this challenge a lot. It's now called View Music. So instead of being called Do Math, it's called View Music. And I will go ahead and just update that to say View Music on the website as well. So go ahead and get started. Then once we do that, I keep an eye on the scoreboard. I'll be posting some updates. Post questions if you have them in the Discord, and I'm happy to answer your questions. You can always post code samples, and we can take a look. Yeah. One other thing that you might have, if you get an error, you'll see this. It says select a target. You can pick anything you want. It doesn't matter. They all work. So it literally doesn't matter.